So I've entitled this podcast as Libby's iPhone. And this case can be solved by just the placement alone of Libby's iPhone. Um, Now, I I have an advantage in this case in that I know who the killer was, and it helps me figure things out by knowing who it was. Um, and it's like uh, betting on a sports game. If you have to bet before the game, and I get to bet on who wins after the game, that gives me a huge advantage. And so I know that Ron Logan was solely responsible for this crime, and it helps me figure things out that I couldn't figure out otherwise. And so let's go to back to Libby's iPhone. Um, it was placed in a shoe and put under Abby's leg. Well, why? Why did Ron Logan do that? Ron Logan did that because he didn't know how to turn the phone off, and he wanted it to not have reception. Now, he knew enough about being in that ravine that reception was hard to get down there anyway. Um, but certainly, if he put it in a shoe and put it under Abby's leg, then it would have a much more difficult time getting reception. But the fact that it was placed in a shoe and under her leg tells me that whoever the individual that put it there did not know how to turn that phone off. And so Ron Logan um, had his iPhone, I'm sorry, had a flip phone. And this is his flip phone. And this is how he turned his phone on and off.
Hold this for roughly 3 seconds. You'll feel a little vibration, and as you can see, it begins powering on. Now, these nice little flip phones are great because they power on fairly quickly, as well as power off fairly quickly.
All right, so that's how Ron Logan knew how to turn a phone on and off by pressing. And, you know, by 2017, most people have moved on to smartphones, um, but he was stuck in his ways. Ron Logan, he liked what he liked, and he just didn't like changing. Now, I'm a little older myself, and I was a little stuck in my ways as well. And I was a little slow to change. This is my old flip phone, but I have finally come around to those smartphones. But Ron Logan had never messed with the smartphone before and didn't know how to turn off Libby's iPhone. Richard Allen loves phones, and he had long ago converted to smartphones and would have known how to turn Libby's phone off and would not have had to place it in a shoe and under um, Abby's leg to get it to lose reception. So by knowing who it was, I now was able to figure out, okay, so I know that phone never got turned off. Then what happened? Well, it did lose reception for most of the night. Um, uh, but the reason it turned back on at 4:33 a.m. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It was always on. The reason it got reception again at 4:33 a.m. is because the fog rolled in, um, and we know that the fog rolled in during the early morning hours because they weren't able to start the search up again for the girls until like 10 a.m. because of the fog. And so if you look it up online, it says in some instances people experience better cell phone signal when it's foggy because the signal is able to bounce off the clouds, in effect. So um, that's why um, all the messages came through at 4:33. It wasn't that the phone had been moved around or that the girls had been moved around or the phone never moved. Um, it's just that it didn't have reception because of, being in a ravine, being in a shoe, being under Abby's leg, um, until it got a stronger signal from bouncing off the fog. So, like I say, this is the advantage that I have, knowing who the killer was. It helped me realize what actually happened with the phone. Um, let's see. Let's move on to the railroading of Richard Allen. Now, um, optics have played a huge part in the state's case. They want Rick to appear to be this monster, literally something out of a horror movie, right? Um, they've got him in a shock vest here. Um, they have him shackled, um, and it's all appearance. They're wanting him to appear to be a monster. Notice they even hand selected uh, guards that were as short as they could possibly get to try to stretch Richard Allen to make him look taller. If he's such a monster and requires hands on at all times and shackled arms and legs and shock vest and all this, if he's such a monster, why did they put their two shortest guards um, on him when they've got all these other guards? The reason they did is to stretch him, to make him look taller. It's all optics. Richard Allen's 5'4" at his tallest with shoes on, but people stretched him to 5'5" and then now 5'6". They keep trying to stretch him as much as they can because um, they know the bridge guy can't possibly be Richard Allen. He's not. It can't possibly be 5'4". That was even way outside of the height prediction that they initially put out, the 5'8" to 5'10" ish range, which they really should not have put out a height prediction when they had no idea how tall the bridge guy actually is. And turns out Ron Logan was about 6'1", and that's who your bridge guy is. And so they were off on their height, and it didn't help the case any. It only, and I'll talk later about the age range not helping the case either. They had no idea. They should have solved the case, and then they could tell you his age and his height. But when they were just taking a wild stab at it, it only hurt the case by excluding who the actual killer was. So this case is full of optics and fabricated evidence. You know, look at Brian Kohlberger. Look at how he goes to court. He's all GQ. He's got his hair with gel in it, and he gets to stride into court untouched by guards. And this is, this is the difference between the two. One, it's Hannibal Lecter Um, the other is let's go off the evidence. Um, and this is a travesty. Um, speaking of fabricated evidence, there's a long list. I've gone over it before. The tan jacket turned into a blue jacket. You know, them telling their expert, "Hey, match the bullet to the gun," instead of taking it to an impartial source. The FBI. The SP just wanted to fabricate evidence. Um, and Judge Gold stopping the speedy trial. Um, this You don't see this in any other case. She was literally going to give the defense a day or two to present their case, um, and it's just unheard of. And that's just another part of the railroading is to prevent. They wanted him to go crazy in jail or to die in jail. They did not want this case to go to trial, and it still may never go to trial because um, because of the railroading that's been going on. And everyone, has their reasons. For Judge Gold, the railroading is to do the bidding of Doug Carter, so that she can get an in with the governor and get on the Supreme Court. For Holman, it was to get his promotion. For Liggett, it was to become sheriff. They all have their motives for railroading him, um, and it just speaks to their to who they are. Um, all right, let's move on to the next subject, which is um, the knife. Now, this is the knife in Ron's fanny pack. And the fanny pack, according to the girlfriend, was made of a nicer material. I'm convinced that it was a nylon material. And just as his nylon windbreaker, just as you can see clearly through it, you can see his water bottle right here. You can clearly see through this nylon fanny pack. And so this is the knife reflecting, and it's the metallic part that's reflecting. And I don't know if the knife was completely metallic, um, or if it was, or if it was just the blade that was showing. Um, so this knife is about 5 inches long. Uh, Ron Logan's knife, if you compare it to the water bottle, was about 4.5 inches long. And so pretty close to this knife. And but a significant amount of it was metallic, showing. I'll show a different image. This is a different image of the knife, but you can still see it's a pretty good amount of it is metallic, and it shows up on many images. But these are some of the ones that show up better. Um, so it's clearly not a box cutter. I mean, a box cutter looks nothing like that. It's clearly a folding knife, and certainly the blade would have been about at least 4 inches long. So we'll find that out at trial. It was a serrated blade, and I could tell you from looking at this image that the blade was at least 4 inches long, if the knife is 4.5. Not a box cutter. It's one more indication that Richard Allen had nothing to do with this crime. He didn't shoot the girls. He didn't murder them with a box cutter. Um, and a lot of people said, "Oh, well, box cutters can be serrated." Well, yeah, but um, none of us knew that. We all had to look that up and find that out because 99.9% of box cutters are not serrated. So um, I, I'm not I'm not buying any of that. And in fact, uh, Richard Allen's confessions have only helped him. It showed that he knew nothing about these crimes. Now, maybe after they told him um, thing information, maybe he regurgitated some of that. But he naturally would have thought the girls were shot because they were so interested in his gun and getting his gun. So it makes sense that he would think that they were shot. And so his confessions, I think are personally, I would want them included in the trial because they absolutely prove his innocence. Um, Now, I love Brad and Andy. I think they're great attorneys. They've been fighting um, tooth and nail uh, uh, to um, get Rick out of prison, which they finally did. They finally got him to a jail, which is great. And it was great to see, Rick smiling. But I am a little disappointed that they don't know who the actual killer was, and it's really going to hurt if they go into trial trying to um, blame Odinist or when for me it's really clear who the killer was. But if the public in general can't even see it, I can't expect Brad and Andy to see it. But I'm fearful that um, that the state is going to bring all their fabricated evidence, which that's all they have. Um, and if the defense can't actually show who the killer was, I'm afraid that a jury might convict Richard Allen. And this nightmare would only be beginning then instead of finally ending. Um, all right, let me move on to something that I covered before, but I didn't do a very good job of it. Um, this was in my first video, and I didn't really have it zoomed in at all, and it wasn't easy to see. And so I'm gonna attempt to do a little better job at this, and that's covering Ron Logan's hat. Um, for me, it's super obvious that it's Ron Logan's hat. And like I say, I must not have done a very good job of showing it because looking back, I see it. I didn't do a good job. But uh, here you see Ron Logan's pin on his hat, and it's very obvious that that's his pin. It's the same shape. If you notice, it's kind of rectangular and kind of goes in the middle. And it's reflecting on his hat, and it's making kind of like a, what would you call that? A corona or a halo, whatever it's called. But that halo appears in other images. I've seen it in multiple images from a distance. You can kind of see it in this one. But there's other things in here, like this little brown patch right here. You can see this is the brown patch right in here. And there's a spot that's really obvious to see. And this is that spot, that tan spot. Um, but one of the best pieces of evidence is actually this, what I call brown rising. Right here, how it's going upward. And this is the brown rising right here. Um, that really stands out. So these are, you know, a few things on his hat, but uh, there's others. You can see the white pin on his hat right here, and even the angle. See how it's angled upward, like this one is angled. You can not only see the pin, but you can see the angle. And then, of course, on this image, the dent in his hat is super obvious. You can see that dent right there. You can see that it's a camo hat. And of course, the pin in this picture. So this is multiple indications that the guy on the bridge was wearing Ron Logan's hat. And the fact that Ron Logan stopped wearing his hat after the images came out, stopped dressing like the bridge guy, stopped wearing his blue coats, got a haircut, completely changed his looks. Stopped wearing his fanny pack. He had a backup fanny pack that had a shoulder strap, just like this fanny pack has. He stopped wearing his backup fanny pack. And had always wore a sweatshirt. This a winter camo hoodie sweatshirt under his jacket. He even stopped doing that. Completely changed up his looks after the images came out. And you know, if he was not guilty of anything, he didn't have to worry about changing his appearance. And I never saw him wear his hat again, certainly because the hat was the biggest giveaway. All right, one final comment is something that Kim Riley said from the ISP. He said, "The man in the photo is a middle-aged white male. We had one person that we thought has to be him. And then we got into it and found out there was no way it could be him." So I don't know if that was Ron Logan. I kind of doubt it. I doubt they ever even considered Ron Logan seriously. It might have been Brad Holder that he was referring to. But the fact that he says the man in the photo is a middle-aged white male. I mean, I guess I can see how you would think that, but you don't know that. In fact, later they came out with the young guy's sketch, and suddenly he was young, really young. And so they didn't know his height. They only guessed at his height. And that hurt them by guessing because it excluded people. And they guessed at his age, and that hurt them because it excluded people. And so they should have done it the other way around. They should have solved the case, and then they could tell you exactly what his height was and his age was. But this was one of many mistakes that were made in this case. It's my hope that information comes out in the next few months before the trial. It's my hope that the defense realizes who the killer was and then can put on a proper defense and an easy defense. Ron Logan was next to the bodies that evening, and Ron Logan made a phone call at the bridge right before the girls were kidnapped. To me, this is such an easy defense if only um, Brad and Andy can figure this out in time. All right, that's all I have for today. Thank you for listening.